Happy Monday and welcome to another episode of the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking and informational events. Check out winagainacademy.com. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today's guest is Aileen McManamon, 5T Sports. Aileen, welcome to the Wolff Den. How was your weekend?
Yeah, good weekend here in Vancouver, Canada. It was really sunny and nice, and got outside. Yeah, all good stuff.
Hockey playoffs. There's some great games so far
going on, but I don't think there's any danger of them impacting us here.
Yeah, it's some great games so far. So for those of in our audience that don't know who you are, give us just a quick intro, and then we'll get into it.
So Aileen McManamon, 5T Sports Group, which I founded about 13 years ago, and we focus exclusively on sports and sustainability. And that means people, planet, and prosperity. That means looking at things with a triple bottom line thinking. And prior to that, I started my career with Fiat and Alfa Romeo in Germany, where I was marketing manager and then brand manager for Alfa. And then went on to work in technology for 12 years before I founded 5T. So and along the way, I ran a minor league baseball team. That was my cup of coffee.
So that's a real, unique background. How did you get into the sports world? How did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
I think I knew that when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I was like, I would love to. I'm from Cleveland originally, and I thought my life's goal is to work for the Cleveland Indians. That's I'll be happy as a clam. And my dad kind of said to me, you know what, that's not a real job. He's like, you should, go to school, get a business degree, whatever. Compromised on that, but I always wanted to work in this space. And so through the business angle, ended up being on the sponsor side for a number of years with Fiat and Alfa, and that was pretty good stuff. And then as I wandered off into technology, because that was becoming very interesting in the 90s and early, what do we call them, the aughts? It was fun. It was interesting. The global industry growing, all kinds of new things coming about. And I think I realized I really like it when things are new and shiny and growing and developing. But I had that itch to get back to sports. So it helped that the Olympics were coming to Vancouver, and that kind of gave me a way to start to work my way back there.
And how did you get to Vancouver? I mean, what brought you there?
Actually, if I'm honest, the skiing. But my husband, who works in biotech, was offered a job up here. We went from Germany to Chicago for a number of years to San Diego, and then he was offered a job up here. And I just looked at the mountains and said, yeah, let's do it, because I do like to ski.
Yeah, my brother loves skiing. They ski all the time. His kids ski since they were 3 years old. I'm not much of a skier. I think I waited too long in between. It's crazy in skiing how when you're young, you're fearless, right? But you get you get older and you understand what might happen and all of that stuff. It's I'll pass on that for me.
Yeah, well, I can relate because, I often say I've learned how to ski 4 times in my life. And believe it or not, I grew up skiing. I was on skis at 3 in Ohio, of course, on small hills in Western Pennsylvania and Western New York. So yeah, totally fearless as a kid, but then stopped skiing, about high school age because I couldn't really afford it. And then I moved to Europe, and then you're skiing on these glaciers and nothing is marked, and you're like, holy crap. And so you have to learn again. And then, when I moved to Chicago, we were going out skiing like Utah and Colorado, and it's all powder, especially Utah, it's powder. I'm like, what is this? And then you come up here and the mountains are just vast and lots of unmarked territory. So I always have a lot of patience for people who are learning to ski. So if anybody wants to come and learn to ski, you can come and learn to ski with me.
Yeah, it's do you ski or snowboard now?
I ski. I'm the last person in my house that skis. My husband has always been a snowboarder. Back in 1985 in Europe, started snowboarding. And then my 2 sons, as we say, have gone to the dark side.
Yeah, it's we had Darren Steele, who was a luge bobsleigh in the Olympics. He was on last week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a Summer Olympics kind of guy. If you're a skier and you're in Vancouver and it snows, are you more of a Winter Olympics or?
I am absolutely a Winter Olympics person, and have been fortunate to work 2 Winter Olympics actually. So yeah, I've always been a Winter Olympics person, even as a kid.
And what did you do with them?
In 2006, that was Torino. And so that was my bridge actually to get from technology to sports, because I was working for the federal government in Canada as what we call a kinder, gentler VC. We were managing public investments in early stage technology companies. And as I said, I wanted to work into sports. I was given a contract to promote the upcoming 2010 Olympics, but also the technology sector here in British Columbia and Vancouver. So I was over there for a month with a number of different events promoting like our wireless sector and our general IT sector, and our environmental technology sectors in Torino. And then in 2010, because I do speak some Italian from my time with Fiat and Alpha and my previous Olympic adventure, I actually was working with the Italian Olympic Committee to help them figure out sites for their Casa Italia, which is the hosting house in Vancouver and in Whistler. So interesting, a lot of interesting side things go on during the Olympics, right? A lot of business meetings and things like that.
Well, yeah, I saw today, it's all over the headlines that there's some protests being planned for Beijing. It would be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know. I can't imagine they'll budge. These things are figured out so far in advance, right? And I don't think anything has changed since they awarded them the games and now.
Yeah, it won't change, much like the 2022 Qatar Men's World Cup won't change. But they'll work with the idea that when you hold the games there, that opens dialogue, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But I think going forward, there will be a lot of careful consideration about how the games are awarded. There's a lot that's changing with the IOC and their requirements for what goes into that hosting.
I mean, I guess there's not a ton of places where you can host these games, right? So they're a little bit limited, especially in the Winter Olympics.
Winter Olympics, yeah, I've been saying for years, you won't see a Winter Olympics hosted in a new venue. It will only be able to be hosted at somewhere where it's been hosted before, not just environmentally, but I mean, that is a concern. But, you mentioned bobsled. We already have, I think, 14 bobsled tracks in the world, which is 2 more than you actually need for the winter, bobsled circuit. So it's just too cost prohibitive. You can't really go and build another bobsled track. I mean, you could, but it's the wrong thing to do, and it will be a white elephant.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue into 5T, right? Which is your company. Mm-hmm. And you guys, I'll let you explain it, but you're all about sustainability in sports. So how did that become a passion of yours, and what are you guys doing right now?
Yeah. I think the passion point started from, when I said, look, I'm a certain age, I want to go and do something that I really want to do and get back into sports. And I took a long, hard look at the sports industry and said, what does it need to do to be competitive and viable and, vibrant in the future? So it's just, where does this industry really need to go? And there were 3 things that I saw kind of happening or not happening. Like, teams were losing connection to the base community, the ticket buyer, the everyman. As contracts got bigger and, TV deals got flashier, more luxury suites, more hospitality areas, but let's remember the little guy, right? Which I saw as a problem, right? Because then people aren't able to afford or don't want to, bother with taking their kids to the game in the morning, and then you're not growing future fans. So we saw community as an issue. We saw technology as an issue, not adopting enough technology to keep pace, and have the information about who your fans are. In sustainability, it's a pretty wasteful industry, right? A lot of stuff goes in the trash. However many thousands of people, whether it's 18,000 or 40,000, or 80,000 that flood into a stadium or an arena. They eat, they go to the bathroom, and they toss all their stuff and they leave again. That's a pretty big drain. So we kind of started looking at where could the industry do better, and that was the impetus to found 5T.
What's the breakdown with regards to sustainability and technology?
Actually right now it's a big crossover. As of 2020, people are really concerned about all three of those things again. But up until then, we'd been working in kind of silos. But for us, I would say the last dozen years, the breakdown has been really about 80% sustainability, but that some of that sustainability powered by technology.
Technology is I don't know what the right word is. It's out of control. It's just you cram 10 years of advancement into a year and a half partly because they had to, partly because it was the right time to, right? They don't. If everyone's doing this now, I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to be behind. So we don't have that kind of time. There's good and bad about that. Obviously, it's good to have options, but it feels like it's rushed a little bit to where maybe it's not as good as it should be.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that are highly beneficial in technology. There's some things that take a little bit out of the relationship, to the point of like ticket time machine. It's nice to have some mobile ticketing. There's a lot of advantages to that for everyone involved, but it is also, nice to have that souvenir, right? That doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive, right? They maybe, they can coexist, right? Because at the end of the day, you do want you want it to be an experience, and you are creating a memory.
Yeah, like son, you're hired. No, but it's a good point, because the reason why they go digital is for two reasons: save money, get your data, and that's it.
Right.
Everything else that's going on is just them trying to spin it a different way. And fortunately for them, and in a lot of other areas here, COVID has been a very easy scapegoat for all of this. Not even just, ticketing, but everything. If you want to say, hey, we want to give you a touchless experience, like, okay, no touching this, but is someone touching my concessions? Is someone handing me my merchandise? So it was just sort of under the guise of COVID is this and that. And people took advantage of it. I don't mind it, because look, the more things go digital, the more opportunity we're going to have at Ticket Time Machine. I just don't like the deceit or the dishonest. I don't know, maybe if that's dishonest, but it's not. Put it out there. Just say, look, here's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
But also take some of that money that you're saving and offer value.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean. And again, like when it, kind of back to sustainability, it's not about, trying to take everything away from people. It's about making better choices. It's about saying, well, you know what, do we need to do this? Maybe we don't need to do this. So things like a gate giveaway that, I hope gate giveaways in the future are more thoughtful. There is something that they say, okay, you know what? I mean, when you give away a really nice hat, or a jersey, or something like some kind of backpack, that's great. That has some utility to it. If you're going to give away something like a bunch of stress balls that are packaged in another, that thing's really, for 90% of the fans, that's going to hit the trash. And then maybe if you have a kid with you, it's going to see about 5 minutes of enjoyment, and then it's going to hit the trash. You're going to see them all over the place. So you got to kind of just think about it a little bit more, and so let's make sure it's something that the fan genuinely takes away as a memory, as something that they cherish or treasure, not something that had about 5 minutes of whatever. And
yeah, you're. I think you're sitting in on some of my calls here, because that's what I talk about at the with festivals and sports. I said, look, do you want to give away the same piece of junk XYZ that everyone doesn't want, or do you want to give away something that's a nice keepsake that people aren't going to throw away? And that's, it's saving your money, but obviously, as you're talking about saving the environment. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to sustainability. What is sustainability, and what's the end goal of it? I mean, obviously, it's waste, right? You're trying to cut away waste, which is money. It's better for the environment. Just trying to make the world, I guess, a better place. There's probably arguments on what the definition of a better place is, right? Because some people think that this is helpful, and other people might look at the same thing and say it's harmful. So tell a little bit more about your, sustainability from your point of view.
Yeah. Well, first off, sustainability is by itself a horrible word. It's too long. It's hard to pronounce. No one knows what it means, and it does mean something different to everybody. So I try to get away from using it. It's hard at this point because, it is a buzzword.
You got to get people to understand what you're talking about to engage in the conversation.
Exactly, right? And it's just too vague. But, for me, sustainability, people often talk about three things: people, planet, profit. Or in my case, I say people, planet, prosperity. And for me, all three are important. So part of sustainability in our world is how are you reaching out to the local community? It includes diversity, equity, and inclusion issues as well. What does your management team look like? What does your staff look like? What do your promotions look like? On the profit side, or as I prefer to call it, prosperity. Who are you buying from? Are you buying locally? Are you sourcing locally? Are you including, maybe some smaller disadvantaged businesses or marginalized businesses? Are you buying from veterans, diversity, women-owned businesses? What are you doing to be a good partner as a stadium or an arena or an event operator to include the local community in your event, right? Are you just going to and ordering from the biggest supplier and having it all shipped in? Or are you maybe allowing a local company to be that source point for you, to give them that business?
If I'm a business, and I am a business, I do everything in the US. But I was watching Shark Tank the other day, and they're talking about, really high cost of goods. And the shark said, look, if you partner with us, we'll get that cost down from 40 to 30. And if you allow us to get it outside of the US, we'll get it down to 20. That's, $10 per item. That's a significant amount of money. So where do we figure out, my bottom line to keep it in the US, jobs? How do we balance that?
Well, I think you have to kind of go back to the Henry Ford model, right? He made sure that he paid his employees enough that they could afford to buy the cars that he was making. Everybody wins. And I think that 2020 brought that home for all of us. As we've hollowed out our manufacturing, suddenly we need PPE, and oh my gosh, there's nobody left to produce it, right? Or maybe somebody could produce it, but they have to tool up to do that because we've outsourced, we've just outsourced to the nth degree. So I think that is coming around, that people understand if you don't keep your local ecosystem healthy, then you're actually hurting yourself in the end.
This is a regional thing, or right? It's different in the U.S. than it is Canada, than China, than Germany. Who's in the best position right now?
I think who's in the best position. Regions where they kind of get it and they rally together. But I couldn't say per se, right? Germany still has a lot of manufacturing capability. They have very high labor costs, though, in an aging population. So that's a challenge, right? We were able to bring some good manufacturing back to the U.S., for instance. You've seen some of the documentaries, right? Some people coming in and they're rejigging factories that were dormant. One thing that I saw, again, I'm from Ohio, so I tend to watch the news there quite a bit. As we were going through that whole PPE scramble, there's still a good base of Ohio manufacturers, and they immediately kind of got together. I don't know how it was exactly rallied, but they figured out and charted who has what kind of machinery in their shop and created this massive database and an exchange network to figure out how can we tool up really quickly to make whatever we need, visors or ventilators or whatever. So I think the nimble regions where maybe people still have stronger connections to one another and are able to rally like that is where things will be strong in the future, because a lot of things are going to change. But, I think in that regard, the northeast quadrant of the US still has that kind of community, the older school associations, even some of the labor unions that are talking all the time that help. But, again, I'm not totally my area of expertise, but I do think we're all more attuned to it after 2020 about what's important. Even keeping your local grocer, your local small, whatever, your bodega or whoever, there's a lot more appreciation for, holy smokes, Costco or Walmart are sold out of toilet paper, but the guy down the street who I never shop with, guess who actually had some, Yeah,
the hoarding is crazy. The gas stories here in the U.S., have you seen some of it?
Nuts.
It's outrageous. There's a lot of, I don't even know. I don't even know what I want to call them. But there's a lot of people that are entertaining. We'll call them entertaining. What's the biggest
thinking it through.
Yeah. What's the biggest roadblock to sustainability? Is it money? Is it apathy?
I think in some case, actually it's perception. I think it's perception. I mean, to some extent it's money, but I was just on a call with a major US based venue and I can't relate who that was, but I think for them it's just walking around and getting everybody in the organization to understand, hey, you know what, if we save this money over here, if we do this differently, yes, it does take more time to think through how to do something differently, but this is how much money you'll save. And that's where we found the greatest traction early on in sustainability. If you try to tell people, especially around the environmental piece, hey, you want to do this differently because it's the right thing for the earth. That's hard for anybody to relate to, what is earth, but if you say, hey, if you do this differently, this is how much more you're going to have in your personal budget to do the other thing that you would like to do. In the case of sports, if we do this differently and get this cost savings out of it, we could actually sign another player, It comes down to that sometimes.
Well,
you can save
the amount of money that's wasted in this world on a ton of things is outrageous, considering all the problems that we have and the money that could be used for much better causes. Obviously, we'll stick with sports here because that's where you're at. But big companies, generally speaking, don't care. They have the money, they're over budgeted. Saving the money isn't going to go in my pocket. And I learned that the hard way. I worked for a company, saved them money, gained them more money, and they weren't willing to give me a piece of it. And so I got them any money. I mean, it's the big corporations who almost don't care. Well,
I think that's been true up to about 2019, potentially. And even in our space, you've seen it, more of these brands that and interact with every day saying, oh, we believe in this or we believe in that. But, when the rubber hit the road, that wasn't actually being borne out on all those fronts. But in fairness, actually, many of them are doing some great things. They don't talk about it. They're afraid of greenwashing, or on the people front, a lot of people are afraid that, well, they're not perfect. So, they don't want to say anything, but no one is perfect in this space. No one is perfect. We're all emitting carbon every day when we breathe. We're all wasting some things, the intent is to try to be better. But what we're doing right now actually is an analysis of the top 35 or so global sport brands around the world that you would recognize. They might not be the top spenders. We're not looking at betting companies, for instance, who are spending a lot, but we're looking at those kind of consumer brands and we're creating a report card of who's doing pretty good on these fronts. Who's getting an A, who's getting a B, who's getting a C, but also talking about what they're doing and how much they're doing across a lot of things. For instance, both Coca-Cola and Budweiser are investing a lot in what we call regenerative agriculture, sort of restoring the soil and farm more organic farming. To switch over to organic farming, a farmer usually needs to rest his land for about 3 years
Yikes.
to restore the health of that soil, but which is crazy, right? How do you live for 3 years without growing anything? Well, you do if you get financing or support from a large corporation like that.
Right.
And that's what's happening. And what it does is then make that field healthy for the next 30 years, as opposed to run it into the ground in 5 or 10.
Man,
So this
the organic stuff is always much more expensive.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is, it's kind of the things that our parents talk to about as, you got to save. No one wants to save, but you do need to save or, exercise a little restraint on different fronts today to have a more prosperous tomorrow. And that's really what sustainability is about.
The word tomorrow is interesting, is the interesting part of this, because it's not really tomorrow. You're talking about when we're all gone, right?
Not necessarily, Matt. Not necessarily. I know we try to stay away from some of the doom and gloom. But 40% of the world's cities are going to face severe water restrictions or stress in the next 5 years.
Really?
So I don't know if you remember some of those images from Cape Town and Johannesburg a couple of years ago. People walk, this isn't people out in the far, vast reaches of Africa. This is in cities that we're talking. What you saw going on with gasoline, you may see going on with water.
Yeah.
Because the only choice, if people aren't, just like a kid, if you're not exercising restraint, your parent will eventually intervene and exercise that restraint for you.
Well, that goes along with
they'll have to do. They'll have to restrict water.
That goes along with your comment about perception then, because that's the perception is like, look, this is light years away. I mean, not necessarily. But then I also read articles, like my household, we recycle, but there's a lot of information out there, and I don't know how true it is or not, that recycling doesn't really even do a whole lot, because they put it into they go to the landfills, and it's just most of the stuff isn't usable, or I don't know the technical terms.
Yeah. It does depend on where you are. But for now, and definitely in the U.S., that's been a bit of an issue because of the contamination of the waste stream. So the recyclers weren't buying those the plastics or the metals or the cardboard or whatever, the paper, because it was contaminated. So what we need to do is get better about how we recycle. And then that won't be the case. Some of that recycling is being held to the side, but what the problem is actually China is one of the biggest buyers of our recycling, and they had stopped buying it from a lot of municipalities because it was too contaminated. But here's an interesting, hopeful story. Actually, British Columbia, where I live, is one of the few places where it was still being purchased from. So we weren't losing that value. And that's because we have been recycling like maniacs and very, effectively for a long time. So, I mean, love to share a picture of you, what it looks like on my curb every week. But
yeah, I'll send my stuff your way.
There you go.
Okay.
But we can all get there. We can't all get there. So it's important that we sort of keep developing those habits,
It's a mind thing. People are lazy. I'll admit I'm lazy. There's times when I just don't want to go out and take this.
Yeah. And that's part of it. Part of the reason that we're able to recycle so well here is all of it is done curbside for us. So there are 6 different bins that go out to my curb. But again, that's come over 15 years of training us to go, okay, this goes in this bin, this goes, but all those bins are curbside for us, which is a big factor. I don't have to put that in my car and drive it somewhere.
Yeah, ours is curbside too, but it has to stay in your garage or wherever, or your house, and then you bring it out once a week.
Yeah.
Look,
so actually, we're at the point where our garbage is only picked up every other week. but our recycling is picked up every week.
Oh, our garbage picked up twice a week. We got a lot of garbage.
Well, this is the shift we need to get to, but
right, the waste.
Yeah.
Like but so what's better for the environment? Me using paper plates or me running my dishwasher more often?
You know, if your dishwasher is full, then running your dishwasher is fine. And especially if it's a high efficiency dishwasher. And for you, using paper plates isn't as great unless they're compostable and you have compostable pickup.
Yeah.
But still, over the long haul, because the dishes that you use are made once and hopefully used for 20 years, you know, that is probably your better choice.
How do we educate on this? I mean, I cared a lot less about this when I was younger. I was, you know, I would litter and not think twice about it. And now I don't, and I'll pick up litter when I can. And
yeah,
how do we educate? Is it schools? I mean,
it is. I mean, it is schools to some extent. But you know what? I think every kid gets that education and has gotten that education probably for the last 20 years. It's about, you know, kind of continuing those habits as adults. Some of it, but you know, there is also producer responsibility, and we're starting to see more of that. So some of the big companies, you know, and brands that you know, Procter and Gamble, all the Unilever brands, which nobody knows Unilever, but you'll recognize their brands.
Oh, we know Unilever.
We're seeing more take back packaging. You're going to start to see that in your grocery store more.
Yeah, we use our recycled bags instead of using their bags.
Yeah.
And
there's a company called Loop that, you know, you're gonna start to take your shampoo bottle back, or have it picked up. If you get things curbside, you can put that back out there. I think, you know, there will be a lot of things that you'll see on the system side, and we do need to change a lot of our systems.
Shampoo, it's interesting, the focus, because, you know, shampoo, you don't use a whole lot of it. So that one bottle could last you a long time, as opposed to, you know, iced tea bottle, yeah. Right? Well,
you'll see more things like concentrates, where you're going to buy the bottle and you're going to see things sold as a concentrated, you know, whatever, gel or even a solid that you throw into the bottle and dissolve with water. So there'll be less shipping large, heavy bottles of water. You know, even Coca-Cola and Pepsi are doing these kind of what they call, one of them calls it freestyle. I forget which one. Apologies to the brand, but where you're going to get this, you know, concentrate and go up to the, you know, like a fountain, you know, or be able to make that concentrate at home, like a soda stream. But, you know, the big brands are going to start to do that as well.
Brent's a good supporter of the show. He uses very little shampoo.
There you go. Well, you know, I mean, there are solid shampoos as well, right? Just like a bar of soap, there's a solid shampoo bar.
I mean, aren't you still supposed to shampoo your scalp even if you have no hair?
Indeed. It's skin, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You wash the rest of your body. Why wouldn't you wash your scalp?
You might want to use more shampoo, Brent. I don't know. How soon? When are we going to see this stuff? I mean, that's why I said.
Oh, it's out there now. It's being rolled out in certain select cities. You know, they kind of want to see how do consumers respond to it. What are the you know, difficulties, obstacles that we need to fix to get this system going. But the one company that's behind it all is a New Jersey-based company called Terracycle. Interesting, started by a Canadian, but in New Jersey. And Terracycle has a product or a service called Loop, L-O-O-P. And they're working with Procter & Gamble. They're working with Unilever. They're working with Coke, I believe. I'm not sure if they're working with Pepsi as well, and a few other consumer brands on this packaging. For, you know, the kind of what we call fast-moving consumer goods, things that turn over a lot. And it's great for the producer as well, because it's lighter to ship, you know, if you have less filled bottles of water, right?
Is that Coke machine that has the buttons for all of them in one, is that just a cool thing? Is that saving? Is it good for the earth?
Sure, it's saving, because, you know, they're shipping syrup to that machine. They're giving you choice as a consumer, but, you know, they're shipping syrup and mixing it on site, you know, just like a fountain drink, as opposed to, you know, having especially glass bottles in a machine. You can imagine that just all of the effort that it takes to get bottles of things.
Yeah.
that are heavy, right?
Part of it is also, even in the technology world, of making things safer and better and more efficient is expensive, because we're on these calls. We're like, hey, here's a new system, but it's expensive. So it's going to take time for the people who aren't going to want to take on that expense. You know, the new things will have to be around a little bit longer, so the cost goes down a little bit, or maybe get more people to do that from a team. If we're talking about a sports and team perspective, especially if they're not seeing more of the money, the person's not looking at the money. In the sports world, is the sustainable issue more a fans thing, or like internal? The teams are wasting a lot of money themselves.
You know, actually, you'd be surprised how much is going on in this space, and it's changed over time. Like early on, it was the stadia and arenas realizing, hey, LED lights are much cheaper to run. You know, have a longer lifespan. You know, they just take less energy. They also produce less heat, which is really important for like the NHL, right? If you don't have the hot lights on the ice, then you can save on the cooling costs. So it came from that initially with the stadia and the arenas in the early days, and that was around the financial crisis. They were, you know, looking for any way they could to save money. But now, actually, Matt, a lot of the pressure is coming from the partners, the sponsors, because all of those sponsors have these goals. And as I was kind of alluding to earlier, things are changing on that side. Brands are becoming more responsible. And so they're getting that pressure, not just from, they're getting that pressure from consumers. They're getting that pressure internally from employees. They're getting that pressure from investors. So, and now they're turning around and saying, look, we're doing all this on our side. We need, and we're partnered with you. Our logo is giant in your field, on your field. You need to work with us. We need to do better. So what we're seeing now is more partners are looking to put sustainability metrics into their sponsorship contracts. So again, coming back to things that people know and see a lot in a stadium, Coke or Pepsi, they both have efforts underway to take back every bottle that they put out there. They're actually working collaboratively on that. So they're like, every bottle that we send out into the world, we are going to take back. And so they need that to happen inside of a facility, right? So they'll be starting to put things in your contract that say, we need you to show us that every bottle that you sold was also recycled.
It has to take patience, though, because from a consumer point of view, if I start and this comes from a Seinfeld, Brento like that, this reference, but I can't try and figure out every stance and everything that every company I'm supporting and doing is involved with, because I'm going to find that I won't be able to buy from anyone because there's something they're doing.
That's true.
So how important is this going to be? Is it going to be? I mean, obviously it's important, but it's more along the lines of don't do something that's terrible is more important than doing something that's great.
That is it. First, do no harm. Try to do the best you can. Again, we're all emitting carbon every minute. There's no getting around that. It's just try to do better. And you as a consumer, there is more information coming out all the time. So for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with the company Allbirds. They make shoes. They've started to put a carbon label right on the shoe that says this is the carbon footprint of this shoe. I think you're going to start to see more labeling that help you as a consumer if you're trying to make a choice between two things, A and B. You'll start to see that. So if you want to take the time to get that information, it'll be there for you. But frankly, Matt, the companies are doing this because they do think about tomorrow. They need to think long term. They have to look that far down the road to figure out, their own sales forecasts or profit forecasts, or they have to manage their risks. So, some of the choices will be made for you because they are need to make better choices so that they too can survive. Coming back to that thought about we're going to be under water stress everywhere, they know that. So every beverage company, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, is looking and proactively working on how do we reduce the amount of water that we use so that we can continue to be in business tomorrow.
You can get Budweiser, Bud Light, Miller Lite, and Coors Light to use less water and more alcohol.
Yep.
That
Maybe.
was a little beer snob joke for everyone out there.
Yeah, there you go. But you've seen, right? You've seen how soft drinks or pop or soda, depending on what part of the country you're coming to us from. For me, it's pop. It's coming in smaller cans now.
Yeah.
There's a couple of reasons for that. One, they need to use less water, but they're also trying to use less sugar. They're trying to help you as a consumer make a better choice. They want you to enjoy the drink, but maybe you get just as much enjoyment out of what you get there in the smaller drink. And the other thing is, how many of us drink maybe 3/4 of a can of something and then end up dumping out, the last bit?
I need more. I just bought something called Ugly Drinks, and it's flavored seltzer. They have a flavored seltzer, and I'll let you know because whenever it shows up, that's flavored like Dr. Pepper and Cherry Coke. So I bought 2 different kinds. We'll have to see what it's all about. But Brent brings up a good point too. It's a world issue, and so my question to you is, and even if it's obviously the world, but what's the government's role in this? What are they doing to help? What are they obstructing? Are they making it harder?
Yeah. Well, government, fun things. One thing that we saw, there was just a climate summit called by the current U.S. administration. And that was attended by, I think there were 40 different countries invited. Others were invited to listen in, but 40 countries who are, the major producers or the major emitters. I think what we're seeing is most governments also see the writing on the wall. There are limits. There are limits to what,
resources.
There are limits to resources. There are flat out limits to them, right? And as we've seen, air quality affects us all. If you're living in an area where there are wildfires, or like me, we do have some wildfires here, but last summer we had the smoke coming up from Oregon and Washington State. We're hundreds of miles away, and I live right practically on the ocean. But so you would think, well, ocean air, it will still hang in the air. So we're all affected by this. But to Brent's point, there's more coordination and collaboration than you would think. And at the end of the day, we are going to start to hit these crisis points where action will be taken. It will be, I try to stay away from the doom, but just to give you a sense of what will happen climate-wise in the next 5 years, similar to the pandemic, they asked us to stay distant. They asked us to wear masks. They asked us to stay home. In some places we were more compliant. In the places where we weren't, things got locked down. You get curfews, you get closures, we have no choice now but to lock this stuff down. And that is unfortunately what you may see on the climate front, that, government tries to encourage and incentivize and set regulations, but where the resistance happens, you will then get a very harsh response. There's something right now called the inevitable policy response. I haven't looked deeply into it, but it basically lays out what this lockdown scenario is if people can't heed the warnings or the regulations or the guidelines. You can either come along voluntarily and quietly, or we can do this the hard way.
That's the thing.
Government's role is in it. But I think you will see. You are seeing a combination of regulations, but I think you'll be surprised to see how much industries are self-regulating. They're coming together. Like I say, all the alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages are together, and there's a whole bunch of quasi-governmental policy initiatives, and they're agreeing with one another. These are the regulations we should follow. That's happening in the airline industry. It's happening everywhere. So there's a lot happening that you don't see.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really was an eye-opener was during the pandemic, the pictures of the sky when cars aren't flooding the highway, right? It was like clear. You could finally see, where is that, in China or LA or Both? I forget which.
Yeah, there were quite a few. And I think even people felt that personally, no matter where they lived. Even we noticed it here. Vancouver has pretty clean air. Again, we're on the water. We don't have a lot of heavy industry here. But I think people also felt without cars on the road, it was quieter. It maybe felt safer to walk down the sidewalk somewhere. It just felt a little bit lighter and more pleasant. And I think that people experienced that wherever they lived.
Yeah.
And I think people also felt a greater appreciation for their local green space and their local park space, that maybe they walked past or drove past all the time, but suddenly, because they couldn't go on a vacation somewhere else, they're like, wow, I've never been in this park before.
Yeah.
Or this park is nicer than I remember it from the, and I think there's more of an inclination to try and help be part of taking care of that.
I think so. And then the issue is always going to be the deniers, right? You got the climate change deniers. You're going to have the people, the water. These people who they don't believe it's going to happen, and if it does happen, they don't believe it's going to happen to us because you're just showing it there. So that's, in my eyes, that's
kind of like the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's over in China. That's not going to come here. Oh boy, that's really awful. What's happening in Italy? But that's not going to be a problem for us.
Yeah. Or it's, even if it is, okay, it's not a me problem, so I don't care. There's a lot of that attitude. I'm not even just talking about monetarily, which obviously you can understand that. Say, hey, it's out of my pocket, right? My business, my pocket. That harms me. But talking about not from a point of view financially, I think you and I probably talked about this. I go to Tortuga Festival every year on the beach, rock the ocean. Chris Stacy doing some great things with that organization, and it's a mess that the festival attendees, and it's all about saving the tortugas and being responsible, and they have to reward people for picking up. But you see people just walking around picking up bags to try and help, but it's like just keep it organized and then bring it. It's that's the event you're going to. So it's almost like you combine this stuff with entertainment and sports, and people don't care. They care about who's performing. They don't care about the car.
Yeah. I think, it's like for people working in the data space, it's garbage in, garbage out. So I think the trick to that is to start to say, this is what, and there's already rules like that. You can what you can and cannot bring into the space. I'm intrigued to see we're about to go into, at the end of this year, in Canada, there will be no single-use plastic anymore. Now, no one knows what that's looking like, and I'm kind of intrigued because we still have it everywhere. Nobody's starting to make the move, so it's going to be a bit of a panic at the disco here at the end of the year to try and get rid of it.
Brent was talking about the straws. The paper straws are terrible. Right. We have the new thing is the metal straw that you can just bring with you. Sure. It actually keeps it cold. You have some rubber stuff. At least if you're reusing it, is better.
Yeah, when did we become so straw dependent?
I'm fine without a straw, but I do agree.
I think maybe we just need to learn to drink from a cup again without. Yeah. Do we need lids and straws all the time, or should we just maybe it's convenient in some places, I suppose.
Well, straws covered,
and certainly
covered.
We need them in some place, right? But
the straw's covered. Not from me. I don't care. But Brent's a germaphobe. He'll tell you the straw's covered. You don't if you're taking a sip like I have right here of a container. You don't want to put your mouth on it or a cup, because maybe you're worried about the germs. I don't use straws when rarely ever.
Yeah. Well, there's alternatives to paper straws as well. There's biodegradable kind of plastics that were, that are fine. But I think there are certain things at some point, you start to see everybody's walking around with a plastic cup, with a plastic lid, with a straw. And I'm like, does no one know how to drink out of a cup anymore? Yeah.
Why is it such a big deal? Like everyone goes crazy when you don't have this or that. Like, well, all right, we'll get used to it.
I'll tell you what, actually the Mariners, Seattle issued a no straw thing 2 years ago, because I was in the stadium. I happened to be in the stadium when they, like the first day of it. And everywhere, they were just gone. And it said, sorry, in compliance with the straw, we don't have straws anymore. But I think that they still had some option. If you really need one, we've got some paper straws. If you just absolutely must have it, and maybe there are some people for health reasons, obviously must have a straw, that's fine. But can we get back to that? If you need it, that's really the way we need to be thinking. If you need it, or in the case of, again, the tickets, if it's something that you really want, and you're going to cherish or keep or, display, nothing wrong with that. But
let's
stop this kind of giving things out crazy, making them and giving them out and having them end up in the trash 5 seconds later because nobody really wanted it or needed it in the first place.
Yeah, you see it on the floor. I mean, all kinds of stuff, even just like brochures and postcards and just.
Yeah. And up here, A&W Canada got rid of all their plastic straws. A&W is actually a fairly big chain up here. It's as big as probably, Burger King or Wendy's in the States. It's a very
great root beer, right?
Yep. Yeah, A&W Canada is a very, very big chain. They're kind of the next, they and McDonald's here are pretty much neck and neck. Oh, and they did it 2 years ago. They're like, yep, we're done with straws. And I mean, people will quack for a minute and then they'll go back to their daily lives.
Yeah. Well, in the sports world, with what you're working on and seeing, is there a sport, an industry? Is it all very similar? What are you seeing out there?
In terms of who's doing what?
Problem, yeah.
I mean, we see it across different angles, right? That we see the things that you see on the people side of the equation. You see the NBA and the WNBA players first and foremost taking action. The great development in athlete activism is a very positive thing. They're also activists on behalf of the community, both in safety, but also in terms of, some of the athletes were the first ones to jump out during COVID and start jumping in with food banks and trying to, make personal donations and come in for relief on that front. We see things like Larry Nance of the Cavs, and I'm sure others, but I see it because I'm a Cavs fan, started before every game. As he walked into the arena, he was wearing a t-shirt from a local business to support that local business. And then he would auction off his game-worn jersey and the proceeds would go to support that local business.
You're talking about Junior.
Yeah, Junior.
I was like, game-worn jersey. What? He hadn't played in 20 years.
Well, and then because he was injured for a time, he broke his hand, so he was out for a good stretch. He got his teammates to step in and, so-and-so is going to support me this game, whoever else. So that's a very positive thing we're seeing. You saw stadia and stepping in to become either testing sites or then voting sites. And now vaccination sites. And look at all the promotion around that. You get discounted tickets, you get a specialty section. So there's some very positive things happening on the people side. On the environmental side, again, most of them are into the straight up cost savings of it. Almost everybody's gone to LED lighting. What's helpful is when the league steps in to test some of that new technology, so that, because that can be a big ticket. And you don't want it to fail, right? You can't go, we're going to put in $200 million worth of new lighting and then cross our fingers. You want a little bit of a test bed somewhere, but you have some bold stadia doing that.
You want everyone else to pay for the research and technology, and then you kind of take advantage of it.
You do have some progressive clubs that'll do that. What you're seeing is that there's something called the well building standard. That's about ventilation. It's about, healthy spaces and all that. We'll see some things come out of F&B, but, frankly, your food and beverage area, like they always had to be up to a stringent health code for you to not get sick. So there's not a lot to worry about in that space. But I think what you are seeing is healthier choices on the menu. Obviously everybody's including a lot of plant-based options because there's more demand for it. And in some cases you have a younger consumer, like my 25-year-old son, you know, he loves him a good burger, right? We all do. But, you know, when you can get a plant-based burger that tastes pretty damn good, you're like, well, if I'm not really sacrificing anything and it's better, then let's go with that, you know?
Yeah, there was again on Shark Tank that we watched the other night. There was a plant like a gourmet wagyu like level, and it was $10 a burger though, not in a restaurant.
Yeah,
It's funny though. Like if I go to a restaurant, I'll pay $10 for the burger, but if I'm in the store, I'm not paying $10 for that burger. Yeah, all of that stuff I haven't yet. Yeah, I mean, we eat some of that stuff here, but I haven't yet found the replacement where you don't lose the taste. But you got to try that stuff, and it's healthier and it's better for everyone. And
yeah, and you know, at some point, and it's you know, it's for us as consumers, we can send that message back to the industry, going, yeah, you know, we're interested in this. So you know, keep going, keep improving. You know, maybe keep playing with the flavors. You know, or whatever. It's all a progressive thing. Right?
It's not easy, just like you said. I mean, there's companies that have been around forever, like Lay's potato chips and, you know, pizza and all this, and sodas that still are trying to tinker with flavor, like, and experiment with new stuff to see what might work. So it'll be interesting. It sounds like you've been around the world a lot, right?
Yeah.
What is your favorite place that you've gone? It could be for business or pleasure. And what's on your bucket list to go?
Oh, on my bucket list to go. Well, let's start with the bucket list, maybe. Japan is definitely on my bucket list. I have not been, and they're making some really good, interesting inroads on things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is fascinating to me. Especially, you know, as a society, it's a big, you know, a big new world for them. So that'll be something I think for all of us to watch the Paralympics as they go forward. What else is on the bucket list? Actually, the Haida Gwaii, which used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands, off the coast here, northern coast of British Columbia. Okay. Which is supposed to be just stunning. Favorite places that I have been. Well, Cleveland. Does Cleveland count?
Yeah. I've been there. It's nice. We had a good time. Hey,
look, I can only highly recommend it for people. Everybody saw it on the draft. Looked good, huh?
Yeah, I think they did a good job.
Yeah. Maybe you'll see more of it during the playoffs.
They gotta start winning. Yeah. When you start winning, everything looks better when they start winning. What's your give me a Mount Rushmore for you of sports? I guess you can even do it for Cleveland or Ohio or all of it. Yeah,
look, Mount Rushmore. I mean, I normally I would say the Indians World Series, but I've been a couple of times. We've always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So since I've kind of experienced that, I would say absolutely the Mount Rushmore is the Browns at Super Bowl for sure. And coming home with that Lombardi trophy, you know, I'm not sure I'd be able to speak for a week, partly out of hoarseness, but just partly out of shock. You know?
I grew up a Broncos fan and was part of the misery that you guys have. It's understated how good those Browns teams were, right? That couldn't get past the Broncos, and how good the Broncos teams were that lost all those Super Bowls, kind of like the Bills did. You don't realize how they went to 4 Super Bowls. Like that's not easy to do, whether you win or lose. We'll get you out of here with the same question we get everyone out of here on. You can meet one person, spend a day with them. They have to be living. You can't be related to them. Who are you going to pick, and what are you guys going to do?
Oh, I love that question. Just answered it on Twitter the other day. Jim Brown. Absolutely. Without a doubt, I hope to make that one come true. I would love to spend a day with Jim Brown and hear his stories in his own words.
He's doing a great job with trying to make the world a better place and the inner cities and
continuously. I mean, I'd love to hear the entire story. I'd love to hear about him playing lacrosse at Syracuse and what lacrosse means to him, because that's such a special and spectacular game. How did he come to even experience lacrosse or become a lacrosse player? I'd love to hear not just his playing days and his mindset, but also his conversations with
Yeah.
with ownership back in the day, his decision to walk away, and of course, his role in the, in the Cleveland Summit, and that whole thing. But also, the things that, like you say, that he continues to do with players that come through there and has done for these last painful 20 years, let alone the time before that, but from 1995 on.
Yeah.
And how he continues to be a linchpin in Cleveland and things that are going on there, and in social justice and making it a better place. And,
Yeah,
they do a lot with getting the police and the Browns together with the local community to keep trying to make things better.
A lot of people doing a lot of good in their communities as athletes these days now, especially, but he's been doing it forever. So great choice. We're going to put him on the list. We're going to try and make it happen for all of our guests, so stay tuned to that. Tell everybody why they should get in touch with 5T Sports and how they can get in touch with 5T Sports.
Yeah.
Scrolling.
Yeah, well, straight up. Yeah, you can see our URL there. Why should you get in touch with us? Look, if you just want to run your organization better, if you're a sports property and you want to have more money in your wallet to do other things, then we can help you find that money. We find that money in the couch cushions by helping you really understand where you can make that change. If you're a brand and you want to really make sure that the values and the things you're doing behind the scenes are coming through in your sports partnerships, that's where we're working very intently right now. And the other thing we're helping is design ways to reach out to fans and get fans involved and on that team. Like, we're all on one team. Yeah. We're all on one team here, folks. It's that planet Earth team, and the future of humanity, and all that good stuff. Not to get too tree hugger on you, but we can help.
It's needed. Needed.
And you can see how to get in touch with us. There's a lot of free resources on our website as well, including an index of about 160 case studies from around the world of how people are tackling sustainability.
Oh, wow.
And that's designed to help you find your peers and just talk to them directly. You don't need us. Go call your buddy down the road and say, how are you solving this? But
then call 5T for your own organization and how you could do better and be better and make the world a better place.
We are happy to help you find the roadmap to being a high performance organization on all three fronts.
Well, great. Always great talking to you. I really enjoy listening to your perspective of what's going on as someone who's in the weeds of it all. So
yeah, I guess so.
Have a great week.
Well, likewise, Matt. Always enjoy talking to you. As an old school sports fan, I love what you do there.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to get you hired to sell some of our stuff.
Will do.
All right. Thanks, Aileen.
Cheers. Bye. Have a great day.